I'm going to share with you some of my pro tips to hopefully improve your line and wash watercolours instantly. Let's get started. So I am wetting the sky area and I'm using a size 8 round mop brush. Details about the brush can be found in the description below, but I'm just going to use one brush. It's got a really nice tip and it holds plenty of paint. I've mixed a puddle of cobalt blue and I'm painting the sky wet in wet, leaving gaps for the clouds, pretty much how it looks in the photograph. I thought it was a lovely sky and worked really well with these buildings. And as you can see, I'm just painting some blue just above the rooftops. So I'm starting to paint the buildings now. This is a watered down permanent rose. If you don't have that, you could use alizarin crimson. And my secret to really good line and wash, my top tip that is to paint once in that area. If you notice here, I paint once, or try my best to. I don't go back to a mark that I made earlier. I just move on. And if you have any little white gaps or anything like that you've missed out, ignore them. It adds to the sort of look of line and wash. And it sort of creates a fresh quality about it. So don't worry about that. Just load your brush, paint and move on. Treat it almost like a colouring book exercise, but don't labour your painting. So I'm painting here wet on dry, and it's a mixture of the burnt sienna and the permanent rose that I've used for the door on the left there as well. And as you can see, I'm just painting once. Really try to discipline yourself. Even with your ordinary watercolour painting, it will make your washes look more vibrant and fresh, and of course more transparent. So I'm using a little bit more red here with the burnt sienna. There's still some pink in there somewhere. It doesn't have to be exactly like the colours in the photograph. And I'm still using that size 8 mop brush, painting wet on dry, and just sort of painting once. And really load your brush so you've got plenty of paint on the brush. It makes such a difference to the watercolour painting. And as you can see already, the painting looks vibrant. And what I love about this photograph is that these are these gorgeous buildings in Burano in Venice. So I've mixed up cadmium yellow here with a pinch of that burnt sienna and red, only a pinch. So it's a warm yellow. You could use cadmium yellow deep if you have it. And I'm again painting this wet on dry. The colour isn't too pale, I'm not putting too much water in them, but I want to have my paint flowing at the same time. So I'm trying to get that consistency between sort of flowing watery paint but not having the colour too pale. So you may want to test them out and do some swatches before you actually apply the paint to your paper, because you want those colours to be vibrant. So if I was to describe the consistency, I would say milky, but really load your brush and paint once, and you will see such a difference. It's probably one of the best tips I can give you for watercolour painting, because it stops us from overworking. So I've wet the wall area here, the brick wall, and I'm painting the burnt sienna with a pinch of the permanent rose, wet into wet, using that size 8 brush. And I've added more paint at the bottom and it's paler at the top, so I've got more of a watery burnt sienna at the top where it looks like it's faded a little bit. And I'm mixing up here a little bit of Cascade green, you can use Hooker's green, with a little bit of yellow. The brick wall here where the water has sort of gone down, so you've got sort of more of a mossy green effect here. So I'm just pushing that into that burnt sienna, sort of wet on dry into sort of damp paint there. So I've mixed up a little bit of Prussian blue into that green. You could just use Prussian blue and yellow, and I'm just pushing in or painting in just once, sort of damp into damp, a little bit of that dark blue green where it gets darker as it goes nearer to the water. So just adding a little bit more of a light yellow green to the water. And I'm now painting the boats. So I'm painting a little bit of Cobalt Teal. You can use a dilute Phthalo blue. I'm also using Cerulean and Cobalt Blue just to paint the boats wet on dry. Mixing up a very dilute burnt sienna with a bit of pink, a touch of red. And I'm going to paint the rooftops, the roof tiles, with the sort of different warm colours. The burnt sienna, you can use some of the yellow ochre as well, pinch of red, and maybe some of the other colours that you may have in your palette left over. I'm adding a touch of alizarin crimson there as well. And now I'm painting the shutters here on the pink house wet on dry. I'm using some Paynes grey with a pinch of ultramarine. I'm painting the poles here with a dilute yellow ochre with a pinch of sort of burnt sienna mixed with ultramarine, so it just slightly greys it down a bit so it's not too brightly sort of coloured. And it's just wet on dry and paint once. And I'm just painting the smaller poles behind here, again wet on dry, and mixing up some burnt sienna now with a pinch of ultramarine, and I'm just painting some of the window frames here wet on dry. You've got some lovely warm brown window frames. It's a good time to allow your painting to dry. And what I'm going to do for this stage is I am going to paint the shadows, mostly sort of in the window frames, door frames, and underneath the eaves and the tiles. I'm using, in this instance, ultramarine with a little bit of burnt sienna. just adding some shadows to the poles, wet on dry, using the Ultramarine mixed with a little bit of Alizarin crimson and a pinch of burnt sienna. Adding some darker reflections underneath the boats there, wet on dry, using the Ultramarine with a pinch of the Alizarin crimson. And just sort of building up some darks and details around the boats. There's quite a little bit of dark in the water, but remember you want to keep that light area as well. And again, just paint once. And it's a good time now to allow the painting to dry. And for my last stage, I'm just going to add more pen. And remember in that first stage, I was sort of quite loose with it. Now I can really sort of add details, or as much as I want to. The painting is done and I can just sort of really emphasize important areas or more details to the roof tiles, to the windows, etc. It really does bring the painting to life. It adds that magic and it makes it all about the line. The line is very important. You want it to be quite dominant, and that's why it looks very fresh, the watercolour, because it's really just been painted once, except for those little touches of shadows. I felt the roof tiles needed a little bit more colour. So I'm just adding a touch more of the burnt sienna mixed with the alizarin crimson, and I'm painting wet on dry using the tip of the brush just to add some more detail. Again, less is more, but I feel that it really has finished off the painting nicely. I've removed the washi tape and here is a close-up of the painting. I'm really pleased with it and I really hope you found it helpful and it will improve your line and wash watercolours immediately just by painting once, keeping those washes fresh, letting it dry and then just painting some shadows, letting that dry and then adding a few more marks here and there. Remember, in watercolour, less is more. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section. If you would like to get access to my exclusive weekly tutorials, why not think about joining my Patreon membership? Details about the membership can be found in the description below, but you'll get access to longer, more in-depth tutorials and downloadable outline sketches, and you can cancel anytime. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Happy painting. Bye for now.